Hey everybody, and welcome back to our channel. Today is very exciting because we are doing another
Discuss with us.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. What else would this be?
This will be another spoiler review. First of all, we have to introduce our tea. Of course, it's book tea with Summer and Sabryn.
Yeah.
What are you drinking, Summer?
I'm drinking first out of my One Clucky Family mug, because that's what we are.
One Clucky Family.
Today I'm drinking Earl Grey with honey and a little bit of milk, and it's delicious.
I am drinking English breakfast. I haven't taken a sip of it yet, but I'm sure it's gonna be great. And I just have a plain black mug.
Actually, it says JP Morgan Chase. You just can't see it.
Today we are discussing Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This is my favorite read of the year.
I've been saying it as Oliphant, not Oliphant.
This is the book that we're discussing. This video will be split up into two parts.
First, it will be quotes, and then the next one would be questions, because there's some questions in the back that we really liked and we would want to answer and discuss it
With each other.
Yeah. And with you.
Yeah, a little bit of a trigger warning. This novel does have quite a bit of references to suicide and deals a lot with mental health. So we just wanted to put that out there.
There are sensitive topics we will be discussing. So if you feel uncomfortable, I suggest
Skip this video.
Skip another and go to another video.
This is my favorite read of the year. I think I read this in January, the beginning of January. So I had to refresh myself when we decided to go over this. I had to look at the summaries online and I forgot how good this book was. Just reading.
Isn't it? It's amazing.
It's so good. Gail Honeyman is a beautiful writer. She's a really good writer of personality.
You can actually see on the page her personality shining through.
So should we start with a little summary of the book for a little recap?
Of course.
Okay. So this book, I'm just gonna kind of go from the back so I don't miss anything. I don't like doing that usually, but there's a lot to this book. This really talks about mental health, as we said before, and human connection and loneliness. Eleanor Oliphant, she struggles with social skills. She's a bit of a loner. She works a 9-to-5 job in an office, and she has a very specific routine in her life. She works her 9-to-5, she comes home on the weekend and does the same thing every night and every weekend. It's important to know that she does not have any friends. So then she meets Raymond. I love Raymond.
He's the best.
Everybody loves Raymond.
Everybody loves Raymond.
He is the sunshine in the book,
yes.
I'd say.
He works in her office. He's the IT guy in the office, and they kind of help one another out. This is the first friend that Eleanor has had. This book deals with childhood trauma, like we said before,
Coping
mental health,
with that childhood trauma.
Yeah, everybody needs to read this book. Everybody,
I agree.
Amazing. So you want to get into the quotes?
Yes, why not?
All right, let's go.
We annotated different quotes, so I don't know what her first one is.
My first one is.
It's the same one.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay, you go ahead then. You can read it.
It says, I do exist, don't I? It often feels as if I'm not here, that I'm a figment of my own imagination. There are days when I feel so lightly connected to the earth that the threads that tether me to the planet are gossamer thin, spun sugar. A strong gust of wind could dislodge me completely, and I'd lift off and blow away, like one of those seeds in a dandelion clock.
That's poetic.
I think it's interesting with this quote. It's on page 5. Like, we're just getting into it. This is this first chapter specifically. It's not a very long chapter. It's only 8 pages long. The first chapter. Eleanor is the narrator here. It's not in third person. It's in first person, which is important because you really dig deep into why she is the way that she is.
Her thinking.
What do you feel about
I
this book?
particularly love this quote because I feel that everybody feels this way sometimes. Eleanor is living her life, the same thing over and over.
She just lives to get through the day.
Right.
Really shines through this
But
quote.
she questions her existence because sometimes she doesn't feel like she is actually in the present. She's in the background. I like the part where she says, I feel so lightly connected to the earth that the threads that tether me to the planet are gossamer thin spun sugar. I think describes how many people feel very well.
Yeah. I like the first sentence of this quote. I do exist, don't I? Like she's trying to convince herself. The don't I. It's not I do exist. She doesn't say I do exist. It often feels as if I'm not here. But she says I do exist, don't I? Like she's convincing herself that yes, she's important to the world and that she does exist even if she doesn't want to at this moment.
So originally, I was texting Summer while I was reading this and I said, I don't know if I like this book or not. Because initially, the writing in a way was hard for me to adjust to. But once I read more, I got so into it I couldn't put it down.
I think we have a different quote for my next one. Mine's the next page.
Oh, okay.
Mine's page 7. It's the last paragraph. It says, I have always taken pride in managing my life alone. I'm a sole survivor. I'm Eleanor Oliphant. I don't need anyone else. There's no big hole in my life, no missing part of my own particular puzzle. I'm a self-contained entity. That's what I've always told myself at any rate. This kind of coincides with that first quote. I'm a sole survivor is interesting. It's a little foreshadowing.
I didn't even notice that. You're absolutely right.
So when I was going back through this, I was like,
Yeah,
you just forget. I mean, there's so much that happens in this book and there's so much hurt that she feels all the time and she doesn't know why. You don't know why. When you read back through it and you get the whole picture, you're like, oh my goodness.
That's also one of the questions. It ties all together.
I like this quote because she talks all about, managing her own life. She's good at it. She doesn't need anybody else. She doesn't have a hole that she feels at this time in her life. However, the last sentence says, that's what I've always told myself at any rate. So she, again, is trying to convince herself that she doesn't need anybody. And that she's
fine
okay
on
in her
own.
loneliness.
Yeah. She doesn't need to rely on anybody else, which is in a way a complex for her.
So this is my next one, page 51. It's the second paragraph. A philosophical question. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? And if a woman who's wholly alone occasionally talks to a potted plant, is she certifiable? I'm confident that it is perfectly normal to talk to oneself occasionally. It's not as though I'm expecting a reply. I'm fully aware that Polly is a houseplant.
That's a good one. I forgot about that part.
So a little background, she has a plant that she's had since she was little, which also ties into, this is the one thing that she has tied to her history of her mom and
in a way it's
her
a
sister.
Symbol. There goes my symbolism. It's a symbol of her still living in her past and holding her back.
Right. So I like how she talks about, she talks to a plant, she's certifiable, which
She crazy.
she's not expecting a reply. She knows that she's a houseplant, but this is what makes her sane. Let me put a little disclaimer here because I was thinking about this. Everything that we say in this book and in our other discussions, this is solely based on how we feel.
This
is
all
not
our
fact.
opinions.
This is all of our opinion because I feel maybe, especially when talking about something this deep.
This is how we interpret it.
Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for? Canon. This is not canon. That's what I was thinking. This isn't canon. This is just how we feel and how we interpret some of the things that she's saying and how it fits into the book.
We just really enjoy sharing our thoughts on the book because maybe in the comments people can share that quote that they loved, that we loved, but they took it a different way. I think I think it's nice in exchanging.
That's what makes
our
books
thoughts.
so great though, is that nothing, and authors know that when they write a book.
Yeah.
They know they're writing something down and this is how they interpret it. And I think a big part of writing and a big part of an author's work is how others interpret it too.
So my next quote that I love is on page 161, the beginning of chapter 20. It's just one sentence. It says, I realized that such small gestures, the way his mother had made me a cup of tea after our meal without asking, remembering that I didn't take sugar, the way Laura had placed 2 little biscuits on the saucer when she brought me coffee in the salon. Such things could mean so much. So this is closer to the end of the book. Eleanor is beginning to realize that there are joys in being with people. Being alone sometimes is healthy and good for you, but the human condition, we need to be with people. It's necessary in a way for our survival. We like connecting with people. The nice gestures people give mean a lot to us, and even when they're way in the past, some people just remember them, and they remember somebody gave me money when I didn't have, when I forgot my wallet at the grocery store. But these little things that were even just seemed normal to us, Eleanor was just so amazed by it that people could be so kind. And in a way, she's opening her eyes to the possibilities and the benefits of being with people in a whole new world to her, I feel like. So this one's small. I don't want to go too deep into it. It's on page 182, and it says, I suppose one of the reasons we're all able to continue to exist for our allotted span in this green and blue veil of tears is that there is always, however remote it might seem, the possibility of change. Like I said, the further on you go into the book, she realizes things can change. People change. Not everybody is miserable and sad and mean. She's starting to feel hope for the first time in her life. This one is on page 198. It says, grief is the price we pay for love, so they say. The price is far too high.
I was gonna put that one, but
It's
I did
so
it for some reason.
And it's not even a hard quote to understand, because that is so true. That is the price everybody pays. When a loved one dies, the grief you feel. But we never stop loving people. But that's the price we pay for it in this world. And that's so true. She says the price is far too high because there's nothing like it.
And there's nothing that you can do.
It's out of your control.
There's nothing that you can do. You have to pay that price. There's no way around it.
And in a way, too, that was what Eleanor was afraid of all along. She didn't want to get close to anybody because she knows the price already is too high and too gruesome and agonizing for her to do again.
Right. The main plot of this book is her mother started a house fire, and because of this house fire, her sister died. Her younger sister. Eleanor was 10, Marianne was 4. And so I think too, when thinking of that quote, Eleanor could not protect her sister. And so I don't think Eleanor wants to be put into another position where she can't protect somebody.
The responsibility.
Yes. And so even with that quote in mind, grief in this world is automatic. And so she's erasing herself from feeling any sort of grief, because grief has to do with other people. There is no grief if there is no people to feel grief for. So she erases herself from being close with somebody because she can't protect that person, and she doesn't want to feel that grief that she felt when she lost her sister.
I think, yeah, I agree. It has a lot to do with her responsibility and the effect others have on her. And I don't think I added this as a quote, and I don't think there was a proper one, but it shows through when she gets that cat. She is taking responsibility for a life. An actual life, not a plant, not Polly, the plant.
Right.
But
a life that depends on her.
That needs to be fed, needs cared for, brushed, and loved.
Yeah.
And that's her first step into connecting again.
That reminded me, I couldn't find the page number, but I just remember the quote. And in so many words, this is not a direct quote, she says, Polly the plant eventually dies. You know, she's had this plant since she was little. And she said, you know, basically, it's a plant, it's a life, but it's not, doesn't, you know, feel the same way as even an animal or, of course, a person. But she said that plant was the one thing that would get her out of bed in the morning. This isn't a quote that I had tabbed because I could not find the page number. We just found the page number. And this meshes well with her next quote. It says, life was so very precarious. I already knew that, of course. No one knew it better than me. I know how ridiculous this is, how pathetic, but on some days, the very darkest days, knowing that the plant would die if I didn't water it was the only thing that forced me up out of bed. I think that this quote shows, no matter, when you read through the book, no matter how frustrated you get with Eleanor, because you do, because if you're not going through what she is going through mentally, and emotionally, it's easy to be like, Eleanor, just do this. Just go out. It's not that hard. Put yourself out there. But this just shows that she really was trying. She wasn't succumbing to her mental illness.
She was fighting.
She was fighting, and this just proves that even if it was to water that plant,
it was enough.
It was enough for her to get out of bed just to water that plant.
And that's so true with mental health. When you have depression, just focusing on one thing to help you get out of bed is important to that depressed person. Because if that's the only thing, the point is they got out of bed, and that's what matters. And they are trying their best. Everybody's best is different, but they were trying their best to live. To live their life.
Yeah. So my next one is the next page. Another big plot of this book was she went to a concert very early on in the book, and the singer of this concert, she felt that she had a connection with. And so through the whole book, she is trying to find this performer. And so this quote has to do with that narrative. And this is after she realizes that
it's a reality check.
Yeah, it's a reality check. But she says, I was a 30-year-old woman with a juvenile crush on a man whom I didn't know and would never know. I had convinced myself that he was the one, that he would help to make me normal, fix the things that were wrong with my life, someone to help me deal with Mummy, block out her voice when she whispered in my ear, telling me I was bad, I was wrong, I wasn't good enough. Why had I thought that? So this to me was a reality check that nobody else was going to help her. This was something within herself that she needed to fix, and that she had to look in a mirror and say, what is it that I can do to help myself? We haven't talked much about Raymond.
Yeah.
But Raymond was such a good friend to her.
Oh, he was.
I mean, he is somebody that you would want when you're going through a hard. He wasn't pushy.
No.
He was there for her when she needed it, even when she didn't think she needed it. And that's what you want in a friend when you know somebody who's going through that.
Yes,
yeah.
He was loyal, understanding of her. He was the change she needed. He was the catalyst of her new beginning in a way.
Yeah. Right, I love Raymond. He's my favorite character.
He's the best.
They mix so well because they're so opposite.
Their banter is really funny too when they exchange. Eleanor is very blunt. She will say how it is. A lot of people are hurt when she speaks. Raymond, he does get hurt, but he puts up with it.
You know what's funny is I had this written down, what you said, and I felt the opposite. I said Eleanor is good at pushing people away, but I didn't think Raymond was hurt because he knew.
I remember one point, though, I say that because they were at that party. There was that blonde girl. Eleanor didn't understand what she was feeling, but I think she was getting kind of protective over Raymond because they became so close. But she had kind of insulted him, saying maybe she's out of your league or something like that. Maybe I could be remembering wrong.
No, I think you're right because I remember.
But because she describes his face, how he looked, and I was like, Raymond, that was the first time I noticed. I was like, she said a lot of things to Raymond.
Raymond knew that she was the way that she was. Raymond didn't try to change her. He was just trying to help her be the best person that she could be, and that he knew that she was, because they met helping an older man. You know, they worked together, but that was the first interaction between them two. They both would go and help that man in the hospital until he died.
Yeah.
And so Raymond knew who Eleanor was deep down, and so that's why he put up with her. Not put up with, I don't like the saying put up with.
He saw the good in Eleanor.
Yeah.
Which his personality, always saw the good in everybody. He was one of those people where it was to a fault in a way, because sometimes he was stepped on, taken advantage of. But Eleanor needed somebody that was going to see the good and the potential in her. And he was the best friend for her.
Right.
Yes.
And that's apparent throughout specifically the last couple chapters in the bad day section.
My last one I will do is one of my favorite quotes.
Oh.
In the book and maybe overall, but it's on page 227, and it says, if someone asks you how you are meant to say fine. You are not meant to say that you cried yourself to sleep last night because you hadn't spoken to another person for 2 consecutive days. fine is what you say. And isn't that so true?
That's one of my favorites in this book too.
Anytime, our automatic answer, how are you doing? Good, I'm doing fine. When inside, you are sad, you are miserable, something's happening in your life, but you, for some reason, feel obligated to not put your burdens on another person and tell them the reality of what you're going through.
And why do we do that? We don't do that to protect ourselves. We do that to protect the other person.
We don't want to burden them.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. That's why you pick good friends.
I was gonna say I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was excited because that same thought was literally going through my mind as you were saying it.
Friends are very important. So you don't feel like a burden to them. You need friends that are not going to make you feel like a burden. You could tell them anything. When you're having a bad day, you can instantly tell them, I am miserable today. I'm not doing well. And they'll be there for you. You don't want to be around toxic people that tell you,
why are you like that?
You want an understanding listener for a friend.
And on the flip side of that, be that friend.
Yeah.
If everybody were that friend, people would have an easier time getting through certain things. So be that Raymond.
Be Raymond.
Be Raymond. Who was there for her in her bad days when she wanted to take her own life. He was there for her. He saved her. Yeah.
Saved her life.
Yeah. And so being attuned to what somebody is going through, even if they don't outright say that they're going through something, look at the hints. Are they isolating themselves? Are they combative for no reason? Just check up on your friends consistently. It does not matter if you feel that you're annoying them. If somebody is going through a hard time, you have to be there for them. My last quote, page 324, the second to the last page, and I feel like this really summed up the whole book. She says, and this is Eleanor talking to Raymond, she says, in the end, what matters is this: I survived. I gave him a very small smile. I survived, Raymond, I said, knowing that I was both lucky and unlucky and grateful for it. You tagged the same thing? Yes. She has gone through so much in this book, 324 pages. There's a lot. We haven't unpacked any of it.
No.
But what she went through, the grief that she felt, how heartbroken she was, how lonely she felt, she survived all of it. I like that she said lucky and unlucky. The good and the bad, all of it, she's grateful for it because she came out a better person.
She's looking at the positive now, that the fact is, whether I'm lucky to have survived or not, I survived it.
Yeah. So those are our favorite quotes.
Our last part of this is questions for discussions.
What are the different ways that the novel's title could be interpreted? What do you think happens to Eleanor after the book ends?
So I thought about the different ways about the novel's title. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. You can think of it as, maybe when I first had read the title, I was like, oh, maybe she's weird and she's just different, but it's a play on words, like clearly there's something off. I didn't think it was going to be a deep issue.
When you read the blurb in the back, it doesn't give anything as to what this book is about, which is good. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that I'm not...
It was unexpected.
Yeah. Basically, in regards to her mental health, it says she struggles with appropriate social skills and tends to say exactly what she's thinking. So you have no idea the depth of what this book is going to go into and all of the subjects that it touches on. I think that's why this is an important book, because it's relatable.
And I connected it. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. When the quote I shared earlier about when somebody asks you how you are, the first thing you say is, I'm fine. You could say, oh, I'm completely fine. You could say it sarcastically, but in reality, I feel like in the book, it is a cry for help. The title is Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. She is not fine. She needs help.
What do you think happens to Eleanor after the book ends? She is out there. Let me say something.
She's living.
Let me say something. Okay. I appreciated this book 100 times more after it ended because Raymond and Eleanor are just friends. So this book isn't saying you need to find somebody who is going to romantically love you in order to be okay.
To save you.
To save you. You just need a good friend.
A good friend.
And so that's when I was like, you know, when you meet Raymond and you see like their dynamic, even at the party, to me, Eleanor was jealous on the outside, but you know, her thinking isn't romantically, because she at this point is obsessed with that singer. So I think she's jealous in a friend sense.
And I wasn't disappointed over it. I felt like it ended the way it should have in the sense of their friendship. Because to me, my personal opinion, it would have ruined the book if they had ended up loving each other, because there are so many books with romance in them.
But had almost no romance.
It had nothing. Except her obsession with that musician.
But nothing else.
Other than that.
For me, I know that it's a good book when there's because romance makes a book for me. I love romance in a book, but this didn't have any romance, and it's friendship.
It didn't need it.
Yeah.
It was unnecessary to incorporate that. It would have been pointless to me.
Right. Yeah. And so after the book ends, I personally hope that Eleanor is out finding herself. She has been so caught up with the past and living in the past, and I just hope that she's out there traveling the world. She's meeting up with Raymond at that diner. Well, no, not with Raymond. No, she needs to go by herself.
Oh, that's true.
She's got to make friends. She's going to just figure her life out now that she's free from, and not completely free. You obviously, with mental health, you are always struggling.
You can't completely
It's never
fix
cured fully. And so, but she's now being proactive about it.
Yes.
And
so
that's
important.
Yeah, she's
That's
out
key.
there staying active. She's doing what makes her happy.
She's free.
Yeah. And
Free from her ties of the past. So now she can go out and do what she's never knew she wanted to do.
Yeah, right. And so Raymond's a part of that. They can have their little weekly dinner at the at that diner or lunch or whatever it was, and hang
out with his mom.
Yes. Eleanor loves his mom. So I think that she's out there living her best life. I hope. We kind of answered 4. 4 asks, what does Raymond find appealing about Eleanor, and why does Eleanor feel comfortable opening up to Raymond? I think that she feels comfortable because Raymond makes her feel comfortable. I think that Raymond isn't scared of her.
He never backs down.
Yeah.
When she tries to, what did she say?
He doesn't tiptoe around her. He
tells her how it is.
Yeah. And that's what Eleanor needs.
Yes.
People need different things when they're in this state, but it's not that he's being aggressive or combative. He feels that he knows Eleanor and knows what she needs, and I think Eleanor knows that, if that makes sense. And that's what makes her so comfortable around him.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what makes sense to me.
Next question. Eleanor is frightened that she may become like her mother. Is this a reasonable fear? What is the balance of nature and nurture? And I thought this was an excellent question.
I have a quote that I'd like to read that I didn't read that pertains to this. This is on page 48. This is when the social worker comes in and does a wellness check on Eleanor. Eleanor says she looked closely at me, as so many people had done before, scrutinizing my face for any traces of mummy, enjoying some strange thrill at being this close to a blood relative of the woman the newspapers still occasionally refer to, all these years later, as the pretty face of evil. I watched her eyes run over my scars, her mouth hung slightly open, and it became apparent that the suit and the bob were an inadequate disguise for this particular slack-jawed yokel. Mainly the first part. So this social worker, when you read it in the book, the social worker is kind of a little scatterbrained and doesn't fully realize what Eleanor is going through, which, she's
not a therapist.
Yeah, and so, Eleanor has scars from the fire, and so she really makes it a point to kind of put Eleanor on the spot. So I thought this quote went well with that question, because she knows that this therapist is looking at her as the daughter of an evil woman, pretty much. And so I think that it's reasonable for Eleanor, when she's dealing with people like this regularly, to fear that she may even look like her.
I think the last question is important. What is the balance of nature and nurture? And in this case, Eleanor didn't get the nurture aspect of having a mother. Through your life as a child and a teenager, your parents are there to nurture you, to help you. But even slowly as you get older as a teenager and then become an adult, that's when you just evolve into your own person and personality.
But your childhood has a big bearing on that.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Not just because your parents are a certain way doesn't mean you will turn out that way. However, you still have the scars from whatever happened to you in your childhood.
Yeah.
So I think that goes well into our last question. Is it possible to emerge from a traumatic childhood unscathed? No, that's my opinion. So I was thinking about this with the arc of her mom not being in prison as like the book goes on.
The plot twist.
Yeah, but actually dead. And you're like, okay, well, who was she on the phone with? To me, this was her brain protecting her.
Mm-hmm. It was like a coping mechanism.
It was a coping mechanism that she, you know, when you read the book and the conversations with her mom, you're like, why is this mother being like this? Like, she started the fire that killed her youngest daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She wants nothing. She calls her oldest daughter, who survived, but even though she calls her, she is disrespectful, she's hurtful, she doesn't want anything to do with her pretty much. But then it makes sense when you realize that it's just Eleanor and her imagination, and this is her way of protecting herself.
Yeah, I agree. And to focus on that one point where you said, why is her mom being like that on the phone when she killed her youngest daughter? That wasn't revealed yet. You'd see that later on.
Yeah.
So that shows also that Eleanor was pretending that she didn't even have a little sister because the guilt, that was her coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Talking to her mom, pretending like she never had a younger sister.
Yeah. And that's where grief comes in.
Keeping it that way because she'd rather have maybe one family member alive instead of her just being alone.
Yeah.
I agree with you. No, it is not possible to have a traumatic childhood and then be completely fine. Whether it be even just a little bit. You develop mental health issues, whether that be PTSD, depression, anxiety, fear of specific things that traumatized you as a child, like loud noises, screaming and yelling. I think your brain is still developing at that young age. It's impossible not to
be traumatized to a certain degree.
Yes.
I was thinking too, I had a really good thought.
Okay.
You're talking about just even like the tiniest bit when your brain is still developing. If you go through a certain childhood, even if you feel like you haven't gotten any of the traits that your parents had, it still affects you, even if your thinking is, I will be nothing like them. So you can think, all right, well, this is how I was treated. So when I have kids, or if I have kids, or just dealing with people in my adulthood, I will be nothing like my parents. So every decision that you make, you're affected by what's happened in your past, even when you do the opposite.
And you become worried because you were affected so much by that childhood and seeing your parents like that, or whoever was raising you. You worry that you were so affected by it that you will become who they were, and you won't be able to make that change, which would probably be for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Thinking that way as you get older, because as a kid, you can't really tell and show that you are like your parents because your parents are older.
But when you get to their age,
slowly becoming an adult, you worry like more about that, and you notice little mannerisms maybe, and you're like,
oh no.
Yeah. It doesn't have to always be bad either.
No, but that's even in general. Besides the traumatic childhood, you don't always want to be like your parents. That's just a fact. Yeah. But especially so when you had a traumatic childhood.
If you haven't read this, which I hope that you have if you're watching this video, because
this is necessary.
We said a lot of stuff that probably doesn't make sense if you haven't read it. Yeah. But we did say a lot of spoilers. But this book, if you're going to read 5 books in your lifetime, this needs to be one of them.
I'm just going to say, read it.
Read it.
That was a good discussion. It was deeper, but...
It's a deep book. There was no way around. We were going to try to not make it a spoiler one, but this just...
It's too difficult.
Yeah. Next video, we're going to do... I think we decided to do favorites of the year, since the end of the year is approaching. And that is going to be a good one. I'm excited for that video.
Yeah. So look forward to our next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.